Well, hello there, and welcome along to episode 2 of season 3 of the Gardener Ben podcast, proudly brought to you in association with Peterbilt's Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea Gold medals and proudly creating timeless roses since 1968. Shop online at www.peterbiltsroses.com. I hope I find you all well. This week in the garden has been one of those bittersweet times when you have to start saying goodbye to summer. I've not only started planting some of the very first spring bulbs, removing the summer bedding and getting my winter hanging baskets sorted out, but I've also given the greenhouse a thoroughly good clean. And this is a really important job if you plan, like me, to start thinking about overwintering tender or slightly frost tender plants. It's incredibly important that not only the plants you place into winter storage, but also the environment you house them in is clean and tidy to make sure that you're not carrying pest and disease problems, pathogens or funguses from one season to the next, which can lead to catastrophic losses, especially in early spring. So it's time to give the greenhouse a thoroughly good clean inside and out, and a really good excuse to get the jet wash out. You want to make sure that the glass inside and out is free from algae, mould, mildew and anything else that might be stuck to it. We do this for several reasons, not only just to make sure that it is hygienically clean and not carrying pathogens and spores, but also to make sure that during the dark, cold and wet winter months of the winter, that it lets just as much light into the greenhouse as at all possible, as natural light levels are naturally more low at that time of year anyway. We also want to make sure that we inspect any plants that we're putting away for the winter very thoroughly. There's absolutely no point in carrying pest and disease problems into the greenhouse and putting them into the ideal situation where they're simply going to run havoc and then create massive problems moving forward. So if you are planning to bring any plants into the greenhouse, make sure that you give them a thoroughly good once over. Inspect them closely for any signs of things like vine weevil, black fly or green fly, and if you have any doubt whatsoever they're not in tip-top condition, make sure that you treat them with the appropriate chemical. Now I know this will send a lot of you running for the hills and think that you're doing something really bad. However, there's simply absolutely no point in taking your precious plants into the greenhouse covered in pest and disease problems which will spend the winter running amok, causing catastrophic damage. And with things like succulents as I have, you never know the problem exists until the plant simply falls out of its pot and the battle is already over. So if you are planning on storing any plants like this over the winter, make sure that they're in tip-top condition, and if you have any doubt, make sure that you treat them with the correct chemical before you store them. On my YouTube channel, I laid myself bare and did my first garden tour for the first time in months and months. My recording and filming schedule has been brutal over the last 4 months and the garden unfortunately has fallen a little by the wayside. It's looking very unloved and a little messy. There's plenty to be getting on with, but we're just waiting for the season to change properly before I can get on with the autumn and winter jobs. However, one thing I would like to get on and do, as I did with my YouTube tour, was to start planning for the year ahead. Now, I know we haven't quite put 2025 to bed yet, but as I said in that particular video, I've got around 80 roses to find a home for over the autumn and winter season. And I have to confess, I have around 60 already on their way to me for 2026 review. So I'm really going to make some difficult decisions and find some homes for ones that I really want to keep. So it's a good time of year to walk around the space and see how it's working for you. I've addressed at least 4 areas in the garden which could take some development, including creating a new bed under my weeping willow tree and to the area just to the left of it, where I'm sure I can actually squeeze about another 10 or 12 roses and about 3 or 4 peonies and a few herbaceous perennials. There's also an area just alongside the spring lawn outside the kitchen windows, which I very stupidly for some reason planted with bearded irises. This border actually faces northwest and doesn't get a huge amount of direct sunlight. It does get some sun late on in the afternoon where it gets baked by the sun, and that's just been enough to bring the bearded irises into flower. However, a series of cold, wet and brutal winters have led the collection to look really quite depleted. So I'm also going to take this small border out and replace this with some very small and compact roses which I reviewed over 2025 that I'm desperately wanting to keep. The digging of these new borders I'm going to coordinate very closely with another project I want to do in the garden as well. I want to add some large cattle troughs or water troughs to the garden to cover up a couple of bits of the garden which are difficult to work with and there's very little soil in. So as I dig and create these new borders, I want to make sure I have these cattle troughs in position, ready to take just as much of the soil as at all possible to save having to dispose of it in any other way. For those of you following along closely, you'll also know that I plan to turn the wildflower meadow here at North Lodge into a new rose garden, which should take up an awful lot of the stock I'm also looking to find homes for. This area will also have a brand new nature pond, which I also need to get rid of the soil from. So these two large cattle troughs I'm planning to locate in the garden are going to take up an awful lot of the soil there too, to save disposing of it in any other way. Once all of the roses I want to keep for 2025 are safely in the ground and housed, I can then start thinking about what I'm going to do with the roses for 2026. And for this year, I'm not going to be stupid like I was over last year. It seemed like a thoroughly good idea to place all of the roses for review into my vegetable and cutting garden, which has simply meant I haven't been able to grow any vegetables or any cut flowers for the house apart from around 100 dahlias, which has left me a little bit frustrated and lacking in content in other areas. So for the first time ever, I'm actually going to be placing all of the roses for review for 2026 into large plastic containers. I found it this year much easier to film with roses grown in containers than it is, for instance, to film with roses in the ground. Now, I know some of you might find this a little frustrating as you want to see the entire plant, and you will do. But however, with my ageing knees and lots of road noise here, as you've probably experienced if you've listened to any of my rose reviews, it's sometimes good that I can pick the rose up and move it to a quieter position in the garden, and when filming outside, somewhere I can control the light levels. So I'm going to be placing all of the roses that I'm going to be reviewing in 2026 into large plastic containers, so I can not only monitor them very closely, but I can also pick them up and move them to locations in the garden which are more suitable, showing you many different areas in the garden and also saving my poor old knees. Now that you're all caught up on what I've been doing over the last week or so, let's crack on with today's episode. And for the very first time, I have the pleasure in offering all of you that are joining me from the USA or from Canada a very special online discount code. As my guest today is Robin Jennings, Senior Brand and Marketing Manager for Heirloom Roses. The discount code is good for 20% off of all roses and bulbs when used before the 31st of December 2025. However, if you're not ready to get your roses into the ground just yet, you can also order roses up to 8 months in advance. So as long as you've gone and done your shopping and checked your items out in your cart, they can be delivered at a time suitable for you or for your growing zone. Simply head over to Heirloom Roses now and use the code GARDENERBEN, all in capital letters, for 20% off. And I hope that you enjoy listening to my conversation with Robin. I am really excited today that once again the Gardener Ben podcast is heading across the Atlantic Sea and I get to talk to Robin Jennings from Heirloom Roses. Robin, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, good morning or good evening for you. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for participating today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Now, Robin, you are the Senior Brand Marketing Manager over at Heirloom Roses. Tell us, obviously, for the people here in the UK that don't know about Heirloom Roses, and of course, for those listening over in America, tell us all about Heirloom Roses and what it is that you guys do.
Oh, sure. Happy to. So Heirloom Roses is in St. Paul, Oregon, which is a small town about 20 miles south of Portland,
Yeah,
Portland, Oregon.
I've
And
I've been
we've been
I've been
around
there.
since you have,
I
yeah.
have, yeah.
It's a beautiful area. We're in the Willamette Valley, which is a great place for growing pretty much anything. So our nursery is surrounded by lots of other nurseries. We have peonies and iris and all sorts of stuff around us. So it's a fun place to grow. We have really temperate weather, which is nice, and just makes for a really long growing season, which is helpful. But we've been around since the 1970s and have been growing solely own root roses. We don't do anything grafted, which is kind of a differentiating factor for us here with our competitors
Yep.
in the U.S. And we ship all across the U.S. and Canada. And so we are just mostly an e-commerce company, but we do roses, perennials, bulbs, all sorts of stuff.
Amazing. So you brought up quite quickly there. You grow own root roses, which is a really very specific point of your business. And of doing what I do, reviewing roses online and talking to roses to people all over the world. This is something that normally confuses people. I quite often get people messaging me saying, "Oh, I've got an own root rose," and they send me a picture of a bare root rose, which is obviously grafted. And there's
Mm,
always this confusion between a own root rose and a bare root rose, which seems to confound a lot of people.
yeah, it can be confusing. So in the U.S., we have a lot of customers who are purchasing own root roses. Then there's also people who prefer bare root roses, and there's people who prefer grafted roses. So we kind of have three different things going on. At the big box stores here in the States, you're usually going to be finding the grafted roses that are already potted up.
Yeah.
If you're ordering on e-commerce, a lot of times in the U.S., you're getting bare root, which means that it was planted in the ground, grown in the field, dug up, and then all the soil's taken off. It's put in the cool storage, and then it's shipped out in, I don't know, a bag, a body bag of sorts, I guess, in the spring for
Yep.
planting. And sometimes bare root can be grafted, and sometimes bare root can be own root. So you really have to read the label to know what you're getting.
Uh-huh.
But we do only own root, which means that the plant you see on the top is the plant you see on the bottom. We take little cuttings from the mother plant and we
Yeah.
hand propagate all of them at our nursery ourselves. We're actually the only nursery in the U.S. that is licensed to propagate David Austin roses.
Really?
So yeah, so we sell only own root David Austins and amongst 900 other varieties. But we hand propagate each of them. We stick them in a little tiny pot. We let them grow just a wee bit, and then we transplant them to a gallon size or industry size gallon pot, and that's what they live in for the rest of their life here at the nursery before we send them to the customer.
And may I ask, obviously, from coming from the UK here, where and in Europe, where most of our plants are grafted onto a rootstock, why do you choose to grow own root and own root only?
Yeah, that's a great question. We prefer the own root because we find that they're generally hardier, they're
Yes.
more disease resistant,
Yeah.
and they're really hard to kill. So with a grafted rose, if you're going to plant that grafted rose, that means the rootstock is a different plant, usually multiflora or Dr. Kiwi.
Hmm.
And if you see a plant in your neighborhood that has like pink blooms with red blooms mixed in, that's because the rootstock has taken over the plant. And so you're constantly fighting it back against those suckers, trying to keep the roots underground and all the growth of the plant you actually want above the ground. But with orchid roses, we love that you can just plant it and it's not suckers. They're basal breaks. They're something that you want the plant to do to create a fuller, more robust shape of the plant.
Yes.
And they're really hard to kill. Our owner talks all the time about how one time as a kid he ran over a own root rose with a lawnmower and he felt horrible, but it comes right back. So
Yeah.
they're really hard to kill if they're own root. So that's why we do
I suppose
just own root only.
one of the benefits of that is obviously supplying the Canadian and the entire USA market. Is you've got some really extremes of temperatures going on there, haven't you? I mean, over here in the UK,
Yeah.
it'd be very, very abnormal for temperatures to get below -10, -12, and that's very, very rare indeed. But that graft or union point that we're talking very specifically about there, when you're talking about a grafted rose bringing together a rootstock and grafted top growth, that's the weakest point of the rose. And if the cold is ever going to get in, if damage and disease is ever going to get in, 99% of the time it gets in through that graft, and that's what causes problems. So I suppose you're creating a much hardier product that's much more resilient to sell all across the United States.
Oh, for sure. And also we have a lot of the roses over the years have become more and more disease resistant. A lot of the hybridizers are really focusing on like hardy roses. They're not as fussy as they were like when our grandmas were growing them. There's just some really great varieties. I mean, Brad Jalbert, who you talked to, has really great disease resistance. Cordes roses have really great disease resistance and hardy characteristics. So, I mean, I'm originally from Canada, so I understand cold weather, and I've been able to ship some of our roses to some family and friends up in Manitoba. So we're talking zone 3, 4,
Goodness
and
me.
they're able
Okay.
to grow them there. Yeah.
Really, it's even
So
even down as low as zone 3.
Yes, not all roses, but
Not
there
always,
are
but
some that
there are
can do well in
some
zone 3.
some of them tougher than others. Yeah, it's funny actually because again, long story. I think you've actually, or you and your team have actually listened to quite a lot of the podcast, so you may know parts of this story. My husband and I looked at relocating across to the New England states about 18 months ago, and I know the growing zones there were very, very specific. And again, you move sort of 5 or 6 miles one way to the other side of a mountain range or into a valley, and you drop growing zones by several points, and you can go from and winter temperature of -15 to -18 and plunge quite quickly to sort of -25 to -30.
Hmm.
And those two different extremes are, as far as a plant is concerned, stood out in the cold. Incredibly extreme. It's not just a point of putting on another layer or another coat or a hat. Yeah, it's the point of whether it's going to survive the winter or whether it's not going to survive the winter. So it's really interesting to hear that you are able to ship some varieties all the way to zones 4 and to 3 and that they're going to survive.
Yeah, I think it's all about choosing the right rose for your zone. So our team has worked really hard to make our search function on our website really accessible. In the top left corner, you can select your zone, and it will only it'll prioritize roses for you that are
Yeah.
specifically known to do well in your zone. And if you choose one that doesn't do well in your zone, it gives you a warning like
Oh.
you can buy it, but we don't think this is a great option for you. Just to make sure that we want everyone to be successful. And we do have a 1 year warranty. So even if you buy a rose and it doesn't do well and it should have done well in your zone, we'll replace it so you can try again the next season.
Oh, wonderful. It's funny because I have done a little bit of negotiating about on your website, and I noticed that the zoning thing on there was very sort of very prominent within the search engines on the
Hmm.
website, which again for us here in the UK and even through parts of Europe, I mean it's a very very different way of looking at things, but it's really great. And again, it's a lovely little tool that you've installed there to actually sort of give people a warning to say, actually, no, okay, you can have that one, but you just might need to sort of give it a little bit of extra care, or
Yeah.
you proceed at your own caution.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So you mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation that you're growing over 900 different varieties. I mean, that's an obscene amount of roses. How are you keeping track of all of those?
Oh, my head spins all the time. Yeah, so part of my job at Heirloom Roses is I'm in charge of picking the varieties that we introduce each year
Uh-huh.
and deciding which ones need to leave the collection and which ones are retiring. But we've got a great team that has just a passion for not only new roses, but also preserving roses that are on the verge of extinction here in North America. So we're working with the American Rose Society to save some ramblers that are about to be extinct here in the States. Maybe there's only one or two plants left. And we've had some really great response from our followers, and that's been exciting to send out these new plants. But it's hard to keep track of them all, and it's hard to decide how many to make each year of them all. So customers can really help us by, if you were looking for a rose, sign up for that back in stock notification. That gives me a lot of data on which ones people are looking for. And of course, when I find new ones from new hybridizers, I love to bring new, hardy, beautiful, fragrant roses to the public. So that's also fun.
So I mean, you mentioned there about possibly having to retire some from the collection. Out of the 900 that you're stocking, how would you go about making that decision? Is it very much similar to the growers here in the UK, where they're kind of looking at the way and maybe a beloved variety is performing, but unfortunately does, it's very much beloved. It has a wonderful fragrance, maybe it has a wonderful color and a form, but unfortunately maybe doesn't like the weather conditions that we're experiencing these days, or doesn't do particularly well with poor air quality. Are those the kind of factors you're
Hmm.
you're putting into your decision making?
Yeah, for sure. And also, not all roses perform well on own root. So
Yes.
we are honest about that, and not all do great on own root. So if it doesn't do well on own root, or if it's very difficult to propagate, which is hard for our team, then it might be on the chopping block. If it's not getting a lot of, you know, love from the public, that might be on the chopping block.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, if there's a rose that I'm like, this one's really good and nobody knows about it. Like this year we brought back Barrel Bach and I'm like, this is a great rose. I don't know why nobody's buying it. And so we reintroduced it to try to encourage all the new growers like, hey, here's a
Yeah.
classic older rose you should be growing.
It's
But
funny.
sometimes we also have roses that look similar, but they're just
Yes.
more hardy now. So if I find a rose that's more hardier and more disease resistant, then and it looks similar to an old rose, I might let the old one go and bring the new one, which is going to give people more success in their gardens.
It's funny that you mentioned that actually with some roses not growing so well on their own roots, but I'm fully aware here in the UK that there are several varieties, especially if we sort of focus in on David Austin as a breeder, that there are several varieties here in the UK that I have tarnished with. I take huge amount of responsibility with this with my personal review process. It's a very lengthy and scientific process a rose goes through when I open my mouth. It's a 12-month process for me before I actually say anything
Mm-hmm.
about a rose. And I'm going to pick on a rose that's now been retired here in the UK. For instance, Darcy Bustle from David Austin here in the UK is a really fairly weak variety. I've really struggled to get it to move, and it's always got black spot. It produces one huge flush of flowers at the beginning of the season. They're beautifully formed, they're very shallowly cupped. They open beautifully, lovely fragrance, but then it drops all of its leaves and it looks all horrible. And you might get a couple of flowers out of it towards the back of late July. However, on its own roots in America, that rose absolutely thrives. I know people all over the country that have whole borders of Darcy Bustle that get, really, really big, and they flower continuously all summer long. So it's really interesting to hear you say that some varieties don't do particularly well on their own roots. And there's me telling I'm aware that there's several varieties, even for instance, Emily Bronte from David Austin. That one here in the UK is
Mm-hmm.
very, very small. It's contained by its rootstocks to a around 3 feet by 3 feet. It's very small and compact. However, buy that one in Australia or buy that one from yourselves over in America, and it can get to sort of 7 or 8 feet tall. It's almost a small climber.
Yeah, yeah, that one. I mean, for us, Emily Bronte especially averages 4 to 5 feet.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's so crazy how different things grow because I mean, while we might have similar zones between Europe and North America, we really do have different growing conditions, which greatly
Indeed, you do.
affects. Like I
Yes,
was
yeah.
speaking with Cordes last week about some of their roses, and Madame Anisette is one of my favorites of Cordes, and that one they said it grows 5 foot, 5-ish feet in Germany, and mine in my backyard here in Oregon, I swear she's 9 foot tall. Like it's a beast. She's a massive beast, but she's so beautiful and so fragrant. And so I'm like, I'm willing to deal with her wildness because she's just worth it.
I'd love to get in front of many more Cordes roses, but obviously here in the UK they're fairly difficult to come by. I'm working quite closely alongside with Peter Beals at the moment that have several of their roses and in their collections, along with Georges Delbard from France. There's several wonderful varieties
Mm-hmm.
from them as well, and I know Peter Beals are very keen to get some of their wonderful creations across the Atlantic and over into American growers just as soon as possible as well.
Yes, I'm excited to get them too. We
Well,
need
that
more
that,
Peter Beals over here.
that brings us very nicely to an up and coming collaboration. Now, I believe that we have a friend in common as well that you are going to be working along quite closely with over the next few years.
I do. I mean, I am Canadian. I love my Canadians. So I'm very excited to be working with Greg Delvere in BC. He's
Yes,
got such great varieties, and I really feel like he's been under the radar for so long. And I kind of feel like he's the Griffith Buck of Canada because he's going to plant his roses, give them a little bit of care, but if they don't thrive on their own, he tosses them. Like he is ruthless, but he loves them all, and he makes sure that they're, they're kind of English looking. I feel like he's really honing in on that English ruffled, heavily cupped petals, and his foliage of his roses. Oh my gosh, his foliage is just as beautiful as his plants.
yeah,
And I love that. Don't you agree?
I'm just going to say that having done over 300 personal reviews now, I mean, I haven't seen very many of Brad's roses. I've actually got a couple coming for bare root season over the winter through Peter Beals. He's actually sent them to me via Peter Beals here in the UK for me to look at and grow and review on his behalf. I'm very excited, but
Wonderful.
he sends me loads of little personalized videos and clips of roses that he's bred and stuff in his polytunnels he's bringing on. The more videos I see, it's really interesting to see the eye for things that he has. And yes, you're correct. He has an eye for absolutely faultless and spotless foliage, normally with a high gloss,
Mhm.
a very deep sheen. And he does, I say, he likes those. paler colours, the pinks and the soft sherbet yellows and the much more frilly and the much more three-dimensional roses are coming away from the more traditional sort of hybrid tea swirl, or what I would classify as an old-fashioned rose here in the UK, because obviously they come from the 40s,
Hmm.
50s, 60s, and 70s. But he does have a very, very wonderful eye and a lovely human being all round. Just an absolute wonderful soul to talk to as well.
Oh, totally agree. Yes, I love him. He's great.
So
When he
which
stops sending me text messages, I'll be sad because I love getting my picture of the day from him of his newest rose.
so which roses of Brad's are you going to be adding to the collections in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so our observation house, we probably have 30 new varieties of his that we're observing right now. And this
Oh
year we were
wow.
able to release, yeah, quite a few. This year we released three of his. We did William P.J. McCarthy, which is such a prolific pink bloomer. That one, when it was even babies in their little pots in the greenhouses, they were pushing out these bright, bright blooms all year long. So that was really fascinating to watch. Caramel Kiss was another one of his.
Oh no,
It's kind
I've
of a,
seen that one in picture form. That one's a little bit of me. That one's
oh,
beautiful.
it's beautiful. It's this mocha apricot color. Kind of changes a little bit with the weather, so
Hmm.
it does have some color fluctuation. Sometimes a little bit more pink, a little bit more lavendery, but it smells so amazing. And I had our whole team like smelling this rose. I'm like, what does everyone smell in this? And one of our team members said it smelled like a strawberry hard candy. Like it just tasted
Yeah.
so. It smelled like it tasted sweet, you know.
Hmm.
So that one I love. And then we also did Perfumed Kiss, which he had already released in, I believe, New Zealand and Australia. And it performs really well. Beautiful lavender grandiflora there.
Wonderful. So all of those are available for your customers to order now, are they? They can get hold of those varieties now if they wanted to.
They can look on the website. I think we sold out of most of them. I was not surprised. We put them on our website, and his roses sold out within, I believe, like weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're sold out. But they can sign up for a back in stock notification if they're gone,
Yeah.
and that means that when we are able to bring new plants back in stock, they'll be the first to know before we release it to the public. And the nice thing about Owner Roses is we're propagating and growing plants year round, so we can ship roses anytime because in the U.S. here, our California, Texas customers want their roses to ship, January, February, while our Michigan and Maine customers don't want them till April, May, June. So we can really ship roses anytime. So you can purchase anytime and have them ship up to 8 months in
Yeah,
advance.
I just going to say you've stolen my line there. A really interesting thing to see on your website that you can actually order up to 8 months in advance and either have them shipped at
Yeah.
a time that's suitable for the customer, i.e. they've got they're back at a property, for instance, they might not go to during the summer months or winter months, or they've prepared a bed and they're now ready to plant, or as you mentioned a second ago, that it's actually a suitable planting time for them in their growing zone.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I don't like to miss out on a rose. So if I see it's available, I just buy it and then I just pick it all to ship at the same time. So then I can have one Mother's Day weekend for me. That is everybody helps me in the garden and we plant everything on Mother's Day weekend. So I just have everything arrive that weekend.
So you actually grow roses at home yourself as well, do you?
I do. I don't have a ton of land, but I just have a small suburban yard and I probably have 25 roses. I do also grow dahlias. I heard your podcast with Christine the
Yes,
other
yeah,
week and
yeah.
I have about 250 roses, or dahlias. So I
Okay,
love dahlias too.
yeah. So do I. I mean, I often find that the two seem to go very much hand in hand with rose growers. They have a passion, and for me, my passion focuses very much and heavily around roses. And it's funny, my Reiki practitioner when she works on me, when she closes her eyes, she says, "Ben, I just see you surrounded with roses. I see you on a swing as a child surrounded by roses. I see you now surrounded by roses." In my head, she goes, "It's just roses." And I think, well, yeah, it is just roses, but I also like to eke out the both ends of the season. So I always start the season with lots of peonies and lots of bearded irises. And then I carry on through the roses with the sweet peas. And I end the season eking out the very, very few last bits of sunshine that we can get with the last of the dahlias. And I think those are, I often refer to them with my followers as my big five. The bearded irises, the peonies, the roses, the sweet peas, and very, very lastly, the dahlias, because they are absolutely glorious.
Oh, I grow all of those, and I love them all as well. Those are all great choices. I started my gardening journey started with sweet peas because
Okay.
my grandfather used to grow in Canada a huge long fence of sweet peas, and it's just always so beautiful. And so when I moved to Oregon here, I wasn't much into gardening, and my husband bought me some sweet peas for Mother's Day one year because he knew I loved them, and I just became addicted. And I found a sweet pea grower here in the U.S., a farmhouse flower farm. Marin grows sweet peas, and I drove up to Washington State to take one of her classes on sweet peas, and I just became addicted. And that's what got me into gardening with sweet peas first, then dahlias, and then roses.
Oh, so they were what we would call your gateway plants. They were your entry
Yes,
route into horticulture. Every single year,
they were.
I grow them to exhibit quality here, and every single year, like for instance, I took them out several weeks ago, and I said, no, I'm not going to do them next year, and I know what it'll be like. I'll be sat on the sofa in the deepest, darkest months of the winter, and I'll think, maybe I'll just grow a line or so. Maybe I'll grow, I don't know, 40 or 50 plants, just enough for, just for a few bunches for myself. And then before I know it, I'll get online and I'll have a look at what's available. And I've ordered several hundred seeds. And before I know it, I've got several hundred plants and they've taken over the greenhouse. And then unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunately, some people think this is a wonderful problem, but picking sweet peas at 5 o'clock in the morning when you've got no choice but to pick hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stems, and I question myself in sort of by late July, middle of August, and I'm out there at 5 o'clock in the morning picking as the sun comes up, thinking, Ben, what on earth are you doing with yourself? What are you doing?
Oh, but it's the scent is so amazing. It's so worth it. I mean, are you truly a gardener if you're not outside in your pajamas first thing in the morning
Well,
cutting blooms?
it's exactly. I mean, every single gardener across the world is doing exactly that. 5 5 past 5, they're out either looking for slugs and snails, or they're out looking in water in their greenhouse before they go to work, or I say they're out like me picking sweet peas just as the sun comes up because that's the ideal time to pick them.
Yep, agreed.
Now
Now
it's
I want to
funny.
see a picture of your sweet peas.
Well, yes, okay. I must be confess, this year they were a little bit of a disaster. The summer here in the UK was well, I suppose some people would think it was lovely, but it was absolutely brutally hot. And here on the south coast of England, it was brutally, brutally dry. I mean, we didn't receive any rain here for very nearly 3 months, which to a lot
Mm,
of people growing and a lot of people listening to the podcast over in America, especially those down south, will say that's not a long time. However, for us here in the UK, that was a very, very long time. The lawns went dead,
yeah.
it went brown. A lot of mature trees dropped their leaves, they went into stress. A lot of large evergreen shrubs, and for instance, they actually died and dropped their leaves completely. They won't come back at all. So yeah, it was a very, very brutal summer, which meant, unfortunately, even with an irrigation system, the sweet peas they ran very quickly, and then the powdery mildew set in. So unfortunately, they left the garden quite early this year, I'm afraid. It was a bit of a disastrous
Oh,
season, but
summer.
which will probably make me want to grow them even more when it comes to the times of the
See,
winter.
it's true. Out in February, I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go outside in the pouring rain and direct sow a whole bunch of sweet peas right now. Why not?
We were talking just a second ago about other perennial plants as well, and it's something that heirloom roses are slowly but surely moving into with your guidance, is it? You're expanding the range of very specific perennials and bulbs, for instance.
Yes. So right now we're doing bulbs. People can order them now for fall planting. So we've got allium, anemones, crocus, daffodils, hyacinths, iris, peonies, ranunculus, tulips, all sorts of stuff.
Wonderful. So lots and lots of things, which we would classify here in the UK as what we would call a companion plant. So again, giving people
Hmm.
loads of things to plant alongside their roses to create what we would again also describe. I hate to take over the conversation here, but we're almost creating the quintessential English cottage garden.
It's true. That's super on trend here in the States, cottage gardens. A little bit messier version than an English cottage garden. We're a little bit more scattering everything everywhere and less
Oh no,
lines and structure.
it's very much my
But
style. I'm very untidy when it comes to my garden. Everything's all over the place.
yeah, so I love planting bulbs just because the roses take a little while to get going. They
Hmm.
take a little while here. Late spring, we're finally starting to see blooms, but I can't wait that long. So I like having things popping up like the hyacinth and the crocus really early, and then my daffodils. I'm really into this one daffodil called Replete. It's kind
Hmm.
of a creamy with a ruffled apricot center, and I just want blooms as soon as I can get them in the house. I want them in the house. So
So you
I can
cut them
have
and
something
cut them and
planted
bring them in.
all the way. Yeah, for
And
sure.
that variety, variety is available on the website now, or that's just something that you have at home?
No, that's right. It's on our website now. Of
Oh,
course, if I
brilliant.
pick the blooms, you better believe Replete's going to be there. So yeah, Replete's on there. We've got some really beautiful tulips this year: Jackpot, Coral Pride. There's one called Apricot Fox, which is a really pretty colored tulip that I'm excited about. And
Yeah.
then, of course, peonies, because the peonies are just like the precursor to the roses, right?
Oh yes, I mean, I
So,
started my peony collection about 11 or 12 years ago. It wasn't very long ago. I basically my husband used to buy me cut peonies. My birthday is in the third week of May, so it's normally peony season, and I they're my favourite flower
hmm
apart from roses. So I used to get a fairly large bunch of cut peonies every single year. And I said to him about 12 years ago, I said they're glorious, but they only last 4, 5, maybe 6 days in a vase. This is beautiful, but almost a little bit of a waste of money. So next year, would you mind just buying me maybe a peony? Just one peony, and I'll have a peony plant, and I can plant it in the garden anyway. My collection grew and grew and grew, and I think I'm now growing well over 50 varieties of peonies. So now,
ooh,
so quite
beautiful.
so quite naturally, I also led myself on to start reviewing peonies, like I started to review and bring my personal observations of roses. So there's now a peony review season from myself, which will carry on next year. But much like the roses, they take a little while to establish. So it's not just a point in sort of buying
Yeah.
a plant or putting one in the ground. Some of them take several years to get established, and you might get one flower in the first 3 years, and you think, oh, okay, was that enough to work with? No, it's not. So I'll wait another year. So yeah, there's quite a large collection. I mean, you said you didn't have a huge lot over there at home, but here it's not massive here either. We've only got a third of an acre, and I'm literally bursting at the seams. I'm having to make very difficult decisions, much like yourself with your 900 varieties stocked by Heirloom. That which varieties am I keeping? Which ones am I going to be replacing? What's bringing me joy, and what is going to bring me more joy in the future, and what can I replace with things? So I'm having to do a lot of that kind of thing here at the moment.
What's your most productive peony thus far?
Oh, it's honestly, it's one called Lady Alexandra Duff. And
Ooh.
I said in my personal review, I have no idea who Lady Alexandra Duff is or was. It's a beautiful multi-headed variety. It comes up quite tall, produces multiple flowers per stem, which I think is an absolute win-win. Um, so she produces, I don't know, something in the region of 6, 7 heads per stem, and they all open at slightly different times, which means its flowering period actually lasts for around 6 to 8 weeks, which is a really long time.
Ooh.
They each bloom measuring something in a region of about 20 centimeters, 8 inches in diameter, a very, very soft pink with marbles of raspberry flecked through it. Absolutely stunning. It is breathtakingly beautiful. And I've got one called Vogue as well, which I got here in the UK through Primrose Hall Peonies, who are one of the very, very high-end peony suppliers here in the UK. They're always at Chelsea Flower Show. And again, that one Vogue is again a very, very beautiful one as well. Very similar to Lady Alexandra Duff. Lots of the similar characteristics, but yeah, and also peony Coral Charm, which is a fairly open one I love as well.
Yes.
Really
I
big
grow
bloom.
coral charm in my
Yeah.
yard. She's great. I
It's a
love
very
that one.
it's a
Yeah, so
very
this year when
rewarding.
we were picking the peonies this year, we tried to come up with a variety of picking some that were, solid classics that are readily available. So people who want to just dabble with a peony to try, like Coral Charm is a great starter peony. She's
Yeah.
super prolific. And I mean, I divided her on accident. I didn't mean to. I was shoveling too aggressively. But I divided her on accident and replanted her in a different place in the yard, knowing, peonies can take up to a couple of years to start getting into bloom production. And she produced the first year. So I was really quite surprised. Not a ton, but she produced a couple blooms. So I thought that was
Wonderful.
pretty amazing.
And
But
if,
we
and,
also chose some that were a little harder to find, like
mhm.
Caroline Constable or Pasteligant. And we actually got a Joyful Romantic. We only have just a handful of those blooms. It's a beautiful multicolored pink, kind of lavender undertones with some mocha coloring in it. very similar to Coco Loco, I think,
Okay, yeah.
the rose.
So Rose, I'm struggling to get hold of here in the UK. I was hoping to bring a personal review of that one to everybody, but I'm having trouble getting it locked down. Every time I find it in stock here, it disappears here in the UK. I think it's because it's such an unusual color.
Coco Loco?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good rose. I always tell everyone who buys her to be a little bit patient because she does take 2 years to establish roots. First, she'll give you tiny blooms, and then in year three, she just explodes. So
Hmm.
for me, this is my third year with Coco in my garden. And this year, I mean, on my table right now, I've got a huge bouquet of her. She's just exploding. But it took a couple of years for her to get established and comfortable where she is, and then she's ready to go.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I quite often, because I operate obviously on Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube, and the different media its platforms all have slightly different people on them, and they all have slightly different comments. And I get these comments quite often on YouTube. I don't get them particularly anywhere else. It's always with YouTube when it's a review, and I quite often get these throwaway comments from people that say, "Oh, I bought this rose because of your recommendation, and I'm very disappointed with it. It's not producing flowers anywhere near the size of yours. It's not as prolific as yours." And I said, "Well, okay, well, wait a
Mm,
minute. Tell me a bit about the process. How old is the rose? Where did you get it from? When did you plant it?" And they often quite come back to me and say, "Well, I bought it bare root. It's been in the ground 8 weeks, and yeah, I'm not very happy with it." It's like, well, okay, well, the plant that I'm showing you is 3 years old. I always go through a review
right.
process that takes a long time. This is a long-term investment. This is not a bedding plant or a house plant. This is not going to reward you very, not it will flower in its first couple of years, but to show its true characteristics, its form, its color, its size, the way the flower holds, if it's going to nod or whether it's going to hold the head upright. Sometimes you do need to give them 24 to 36 months in the ground, and just, this is a long-term investment. Give
Hmm.
it a little bit of time. So people do get sometimes a little bit frustrated, especially when they see an aspirational video from myself or a video from myself that, they're comparing their journey to mine. It's like, well, wait a minute, I won't ever talk to you about a rose that I haven't had for at least 12 months. So slow your
Right.
roll. Wind it in and
Yeah,
give it
and
a little bit of time.
the longer the rose gets established in your garden too, sometimes the growth habits can change. I have crocus rose on the side of my house, and
Yeah.
the first few years she was pretty compact and produced prolifically, but just like she stayed in her place. And this year she's throwing canes all over the place. Like I feel like I'm constantly having to prune her just to be able to walk by. So I think you got to let them live a little bit in your yard so you can really see how they're going to perform in your zone, in your soil, with your watering and feeding habits. Like that all makes a difference.
It does indeed, yeah. Unfortunately, the crocus rose is one that we've lost here from the collections here in the UK. It's been very, very sadly retired, and one I absolutely adore. Those lovely lemon and lime tones to the insides of the flower with that one. That to
Mm.
me, just captivating. It's not just a white. It's not just a cream. It's, I say, those. It's almost like a key lime pie in the very, very centre there. Those beautiful lime in yellow tones. Very, very beautiful rose.
Yeah, it's been retired here as well, unfortunately. And she leans a little bit more yellow for us.
Uh-huh.
But I like her a lot. So I've had her for 4 or 5 years, I think. So she's doing pretty good here.
So going back to the roses that you stock at Heirloom, is there some personal favourites there that you're stocking out of the 900 varieties you're growing?
Oh gosh, always, always. It's who's my favorite baby today? Is that what you're asking? Um, it changes all the time. Well, Madame Anisette, I talk about her a lot because I don't do anything to her. I don't pay her any attention, and she's just prolific. James Galway, I have that Austin growing across a fence, and it's now probably 3 years old and probably 15 feet wide.
Oh
So, I mean,
wow.
she's doing
Yep.
amazing. Yeah. Uh, Amazing Grace is a classic that I love, love, love. I can't not have that one in my garden. The blooms are so incredibly fragrant, and the heads of the flowers, 5 to 6 inches in diameter, that's a gorgeous one. I just added this year, what did I put in new this year? Oh, Francis Milan. It's not a new rose, but it's new to my garden, and
Hmm.
I've been wanting it for a long time. But it usually sells out pretty quickly, so I was able to snag one this year. So that's my
It's
new addition this year.
it's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? Getting something that you've waited for a very, very long time. I was lucky enough to land Evelyn last year, and I had obviously a rose from David Austin. It was retired a long, long time
right?
ago here in the UK and in Europe, and very highly recommended, especially through my American following, and loads of people saying, "Oh, Ben, you really must get hold of this. I would love to see you in front of it." And then a follower messaged me, I think it was January, and said, "Oh, such and such has got it in stock." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I said to my husband, "I know we haven't got any money, but can I? Can I? Can I?" And anyway, I hit the button on it, and it arrived. And oh goodness me, was it worth waiting for? It's an absolute beauty.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It leaves you
I'm
feeling
also
very.
okay being ruthless though if a rose doesn't perform well. I'm
Oh, see,
okay letting it go because
I'm
there's
not.
so many good roses out there.
Robin, you're going to have to come over to the UK and you're going to have to help me make some very difficult decisions because I have
Well, I
80
have,
I have 80 roses that are waiting for positions in the garden. I can probably house around 50 of those. And I have to confess, this is a little bit of well, it's an exclusive actually. There are already over 60 roses on their way to me for 2026.
oh my goodness. Yeah, you've got some downsizing to do, or you need to buy some more property.
I just have to keep saying that my audience demands it. It's but I'm getting to the point where I'm shuffling stuff about and it's getting very stressful shuffling things about.
Well, roses do well in pots, so it's okay to put them in pots and just cover, the back garden in pots.
Yeah, it's all the watering. That's the problem. I'm spending my whole life with a hose pipe watering all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to go back to, if we can, just one of the advancements that Heirloom has recently brought about as well. You've completely changed your packaging in a big environmental move. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we ship a lot of roses every year across the U.S. and Canada, and when we transplant them, like I was saying, from a seedling to the gallon pot, we were using standard industry black plastic pots, and we decided to switch to compostable packaging.
Hmm.
So we are using a biodegradable bag. So when the roses come down the line in shipping, they take them out of the pots they've lived in their whole life. They put them in a biodegradable a bag with a twist tie, and then add it into a compostable cardboard pot. It's an actual little square pot, and it holds it in nice and tight, so there's no soil slopping around in the box when you get it. It's all nice and compact, and you can poke a hole in the bag and give it some water if you're going to keep it in the pot for a little while, or you can take it out of the plastic packaging and plant it into the ground. And that saved us 19 tons of plastic consumption per year.
Wow.
So it's pretty remarkable change. And we were really concerned, like, will our customers like this change? And overwhelmingly, it's been very, very positive. And if you prefer a pot, you can still pay an extra dollar at checkout and get it in a plastic pot if you need that container for something else. But
Okay,
most
so
of our customers are choosing compostable packaging.
wonderful. And I'm right in thinking as well that I read on your website that even the zip tie that connects the compostable bag to the plant is not only dyed with plant dye, but it was also compostable plastic as well, made from well, it's made from plant-based material.
Correct. So we're switching over to the zip ties being compostable. So if you get a white zip tie, that means it can be recycled, but it can't be composted.
Yeah,
If
and
you
if
get a
it's
pink zip tie, then that's the one that can be composted. But I do not recommend putting the the bag and the zip tie in the ground. Just the zip tie is going to choke out that. You want the cane to grow. So I recommend cutting them off, removing the bag. They will break down over time, which is better for the environment, but I
Mhm.
don't recommend planting in the
Okay.
bag with the zip tie.
That was good. That was going to be my next question. Because again, if you're like me, and I believe a lot of the listeners out there are like me, their eyes are larger than their bellies, and for instance, their eyes are bigger than their gardens. So they sit on their sofas and they lay in the bath with their phone because we all do this. And we buy plants that we don't necessarily have space for. So my next question was, which you've already mopped up, was whether actually your customers could take that the plant in the plastic compostable bag in the compostable cardboard box and plant that straight in the ground. But your advice would be actually to remove those items before you planted.
Yeah, I mean, they will break down over time naturally, which is what our goal is, and to create less waste. but it's not going to help your plant spread out its roots as quickly as it would if you planted it just in the dirt. And so
Yeah,
we recommend that because, as you know, we want those rose roots to go deep and wide as quickly as possible
we
so
do
they can
indeed. Yeah.
start gathering up all those nutrients from the soil. So if you can take it out of the packaging, that's always best. If you forget, it's not going to die. Don't worry. But definitely that zip tie at the very bare minimum.
Yeah.
Got to do.
And wonderful that you've estimated that's going to remove over 19 tons of single-use plastic from your production line. So that's a wonderful thing
Yeah.
to have achieved.
Yeah, it's a substantial number. So we're very, very excited and so excited to see how well it's been received here in the States and Canada.
Yes, yeah, because I'm going to say, because I don't like to sort of tarnish a listening group with one particular brush, because I think the gardening community is very, very separate from a huge amount of the population. But obviously, from here over in Europe, and especially in the UK, we have this impression that a lot of America is fueled on disposable plastics, disposable cutlery, disposable plates, disposable cups, and all those kind of things. So for the gardening community and gardening businesses and commerce to be making such a move like this, because this can't have been cheap for your business to put together. This must have been fairly
No, it's not
complex, and
really cost effective.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a really
Yeah, I think people, younger gardeners especially, are really caring more and more about, not only the gardens we're creating, but what we're leaving behind when, our gardens outlive us. And
very
so we
much so.
don't
Yeah,
want to leave lots of plastics and trash and things. And so we all have enough pots. Gardeners don't need any more pots. So I think it's fine to let them be reused. We sterilize them, we reuse them as long as the length of their life allows. And that's helping us save putting more plastics into the landfills. And it's just better for the environment all around. And it's better for the customer too. I really feel
wonderful.
so.
Really excited to say as well that for the very, very first time, we have something special to offer the listeners as well, don't we? That's already live and ready for them to use. That as of today, all the way through to the 31st of December, that with code Gardener Ben, anybody listening following the link either in the bottom of the podcast or any one of my social media posts can actually get 20% off of roses and bulbs through to the end of the year. That's correct, isn't it?
That is correct. So anywhere in the U.S. or Canada that we ship, they can use the code Gardener Ben at checkout for 20% off roses
That's
or bulbs. So if you want to get your peonies, you can get those at 20% off too.
That's amazing. And of course, as we go back to the conversation we had a second ago, if you're not quite ready for those roses, you can actually order them at the end of the year and have them delivered 8 months after the event as well. So you don't have to miss out on the discount.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's
or
that.
miss out on the rose that you've been waiting on.
It's absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for being so generous and offering the listeners that particular discount code. That's absolutely amazing. I know people are often very, very frustrated that I'm not able to bring them discount codes for America and Canada. So they are going to be very, very pleased for that particular move.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Robin, it's been absolutely wonderful having you along on the Garden the Pen podcast today. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and talking to us about roses.
It's been great, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'll touch base with you again soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
I hope that you enjoyed the conversation I had with Robin at Heirloom Roses just a few days ago. And I have to say, it is really heartwarming to hear of a company the size of Heirloom Roses making such bold and impactful movements with regards to their environmental footprint and what is best for their customers, even if it comes at a huge cost to the business themselves. Reducing their plastic waste by up to 19 tonnes per year is a really good and bold move for the environment. Slowly but surely moving over to completely recyclable and compostable materials and shipping plants with or without the option of a plastic pot is a really great move. On a personal note, I'm also really excited to hear about the collaboration they have with Brad from Select Roses, bringing some of his wonderful creations to the wider audience across Canada and the USA. Don't forget, you can go online at Heirloom Roses now and use the code GardenerBen, all in capital letters, to get 20% off of all roses and bulbs when used before the 31st of December 2025. And don't forget, if you're not ready to have your roses delivered just yet, Go online and use the discount code before the end of the year and book your roses to be shipped to you up to 8 months later, meaning you can plant your roses at a time that's suitable for you or that's suitable for your growing zone. For those of you still listening, I have the pleasure in announcing next week's guest. I'm going to be joined in person here at North Lodge over a very light high tea by the beautiful and really wonderful Anne Russell, dubbed on TikTok as everyone's favourite plain-speaking auntie. She will be joining me for a really open and frank conversation next week, so make sure that you tune in and listen to the Gardener Ben podcast then. The Gardener Ben podcast is brought to you proudly in association with Peterbilt's Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea Gold medals and proudly creating timeless roses since 1968. Shop online at www.peterbiltsroses.com and make sure that you're following along on Instagram and TikTok. I'll see you all again next week. Till then, bye-bye.